One of the things that we I forget what I entitled this video, but one of the things that could help the leaders of the world is to have explained how the experts on the names of the sciences, like there are a whole bunch of threats that have nothing to do with anything besides, like, in other words, how they're shared here and there as individuals, groups, and together, humanity voicings and agreements, negotiations with things, while the settlements have been things like wars and roles with the qualities of fact keeping nature that can't defend that and afford to have discerned properly why we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged at last. In other words, and James Madison, we're supposed to have what he declassified for his communications, and with and for the other plural unknown named founders of America, who directed us to understand why and how. They did not have the security to let us know their names. And they directed us to understand why and how. The only reason anyone helped with the Declaration of Independence, excuse me, in a way to get to get us told to get the Constitution unabridged, which it wouldn't happen through other ways. Madison explained this. He explained how our founders wanted nothing to do with slavery, laws against all women, laws against all natives, everyone sickly distinctly, including the help to all the hurt that causes and negative value expressions. That, in other words, all positive and negative treatments is a method by that came from before religious messages were born. You know, which takes faith. But it's also, even if they weren't born, it doesn't even take faith. Science shows us that the sciences have been valued abridged, so they could not afford to have discerned with syntax and with distinction slash s the voices of the sciences would have had before the sciences were forced entertained through United systems individually grouped humanity all differences and humanity voicings. We are an individual species body of individual bodies to discern nature's body and how it is functional, being itself hyper invisible but still discernible, as it is as the parts of speech of English grammar of the other languages. But it is also slash hyper invisible but still discernible, as it is, showing us where and how it's generating two eyes across species bodies. Again, individual species bodies of individual bodies, two eyes across them, two sexes across them. There are three hyper invisible but still discernible parts of its complete identity of relationship to itself, nature's. And it is more probable and demonstrable how the ancients of pantheism more probably and demonstrably used, more practically, because use the word God as a word slash value nature, for example, for the science of pantheism, which is a method to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. This is hyper intelligence. I'm also being forced to speak about this because of identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. And I have to make the proofs that I can do the programming. And people have been making things that are complicated simple, and things that are simple complicated tactically ulterior from how nature has relativity to things like that. To all things. But in other words, everything's in nature is increasingly showing us the difference of the hyper and simultaneous, that which we are all semi-nature relationship to, as cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, observed through the microscope of plant life. And we can discern and know water and its elements, and gases and their elements, positive or negative, to the identity of the plant. Also, individual plants grouped in species. I don't know if they call it a species of plant, excuse me, as they do with regular other life. This is a quality diffusion of nature's identity relationship to itself, and to with the special difference of Earth, which is also hyper additional of value to itself, and relative to where and to how hyper programming, hyper intelligence works. All stupid jerks can't appreciate lists the way hyperintelligence can. Answers. I already showed through the breaching method knew this too, though. The breaching method demonstrably understood what an algorithm slash S was, and it is, since before computers, relative to databases, relative simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously. How the breaching method remembered from before, it made the names A through Z of the human species bodies, locations with physics, be identities slash identities, without realizing. All along the way, it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded nature's demonstrations of itself, blamed on other things, others, ourselves. And then it knew that nature would demonstrate that too. While nature was increasing, it is increasingly demonstrating to us, humanity and Americans, one of those things that all those sick laws against all human differences, even changing what nature communicates about with black people's white eyes. For example, at the same time, nature is communicating about criminal insidiousness nature, how it is generated. But see, these are definitions of law by nature itself revealed. I'm not even a lawyer. Through history, we're supposed to understand one of the things that witch trials placed next to Webb Stevens Museum, the Webb Stevens Museum. Before it was renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, it was named Webb House with no the. Increasingly, all identities of difference, the differences of guilt too, of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, mayors, their family members, their neighbors, the conjunctions to them, to that, other ages, natures of politicians. The same thing with, in other words, overt criminal enterprise, private one, terrorists. When did it stop being used? What really is a witch child's place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now they had across the country at founding locations, other was communicated for James Madison and for the plural founders. Then they had declassified for it to be communicated for themselves. The campus is sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, because that's a hyper additional problem slash S, but they're simultaneously connected. And the difference of guilt with that or that is used to keep the breaching method screened. It is present at countries A through Z. So to observe that, we have to be able to discern how, for example, and it's positive to discern these. There's one way, in other words, both the North and the South, those colonies, and then those states. There were more than 13 colonies entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies, through layers of other countries, companies, through layers to keep screened the hyper foreign. No one wanted roles with those crazy things. Only a lot of were simultaneously the guilt of people and things forcing internationally monitored conversations to force. Anyone wanted to speak about those things, they better not be found out doing it in real life. You had to be doing it through internationally monitored conversations. See, trust and loyalty. These things are only needed value because we don't have the Constitution unabridged as the policy, the hyper policy, as the policy slash hyper policy actually, and or we sense. I never read that anywhere. But this is the definition by nature itself, where if we put hyper before any word, any and everything is connected by itself. The sciences, even where they appear not to be, where they're different, where they don't share the same identity, they do anyway. then he pray. You see, this is not how the syntax that was in the books of the school books depository, distinctly from the books in New York City. You think science, honest, and with passion and emotion, especially, spoke for New York City? What really is the problem there? They did maybe the best they could, but the best they could has still being used as a tool of sense. Self-value collusion / S, replacing with both what James Madison and the plural founders and with nature itself communicated. Hyper additionally from what they said. They had declassified where and how. What everyone said was not only measured by those internationally monitored conversations, not only by the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, international companies, everyone and everything, even against themselves. And layers of roles, anyone not collusion / S with fact, true nature, qualities, aspects of nature manifest that way, or sent around someone, that person was sensed, was sensed. So they have people using other people's reporting, and they know that FBI I was going to say, for example, oh, we told you guys we have the right to lie. But see, we have to that where they use the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie, they have collusions with the same type of things, and with victims advocates, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And it wouldn't stay that way if you guys were capable of getting out the paper legitimately, not leaving out any exception. It would and allowing all the excuses, because where and how. Even if the witch trials were totally made up, regardless who made them up, what motivation, why and how they're next to Webb House, where George Washington had to come with the counter-extortion plan of James Madison. That was his replaced. See, people want and need distinctly, obviously, but non-distinctly too, to speak about positive or negative with American history. They are only capable of speaking about it as criminal and seditious natures, valuing that the words used for pretended science, pretended that's research, what people say, but leaving out what James Madison, the only founder we know the name of. We see that should be known by everyone more than it's the only thing they have the security and the means and the unity or nature of independence in any body to have everyone remember good is don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes. And there was a slavery. How the torture, extortion, slavery was north and south, sickly distinctly. So they have the descriptions of history. There's nothing like that. There's a breaching method using everyone remotely, a proverbial devil, a proverbial shaytun. We're not supposed to agree about the name of it. We're supposed to observe the predicate acts with facts method / S relative to black people's whites of eyes who disbelieves. The way is hypernated pure. It shows. It best relieves. So in other words, the whole world needs reliefs / hyper-injunctive reliefs / S. And half the things we could do way better. In other words, we could do such great things for each other all at once. Countries A through Z. And equally, unequally, all the. In other words, we have to pay attention to how their nature itself is showing us the names of the experts and the difference of that, and people countering it. And the difference of that. Who is guilty with it? Everyone's defending fact, true nature, quality aspects of nature that have direct relativity. They are relying upon principled treatments that can't afford to defend that and to have discerned that which is most principled, with James Madison recorded about that breaching method that reassigned black people's rights of eyes. And that they demonstrated conscious they were conscious that they had to leave the campuses criminally foreign influenced slash hyper criminally slash worse, if you don't want to call it hyper criminally foreign influence. But I'm saying put hyper before that any word, and to help discern, and nature after it, to help discern how all words, all things share the identity of nature, slash the rest of its complete nature, the rest of its complete identity of relationship to itself to the extent we could discern. But this comes with its with the relativity of Earth's special difference and how and why as our own, but distinctly. And we could use systems other than other species bodies of individual bodies too. No, and group differences. They're not criminally foreign influenced, let alone criminally foreign influenced slash hyper criminally foreign influenced, not wanting to be, but self-valued being that anyway. Slash S. Right through every instance name. An instance appreciation. Treatment. Nah. And everything's fake for everyone too. The breaching method uses and used remotely. Not one person defending our founders the way they asked themselves to have themselves and ourselves defended regarding the torture, extortion, slavery method that they only allowed. They had not the power and might to uproot, to unentrench. It is a semi part of every foundation of every modern country, knowing that it only allowed collusions so long too, that right where and how it increasingly it knew and knows that there's different ways and where and when and how people could discern. There's a human nature breaching method. That's one of the things that is a part with all subjects and all legal cases of all natures in all instances, crime scenes. This is a crime scene slash hypercrime scene slash worse, because that is one that there's a function slash S, there's a use slash S with the physics, with location slash S, with name slash S, being haven't been used, measured, maintained, self-value, suits and ties, poises, styles of integrity, syntax, nature, debate, and through the nature of debate, all sides in one array. Hear many pray. We have to look at these things, not leaving out that which is simultaneously, simultaneously recorded. We have black pupils, whites of eyes, and other means simultaneously to discern that people brought research through campuses. We also have means to show that our criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence and how and that is maintained. I never had a word of conversation with a Kevin Harris. He's one of the ones involved too, with leaders of the kids, and the kids of leaders of the kids abused sickly distinctly from the kids. We're in how that's self-value through others slash S too, where there's a method recorded here. And it is reliant upon people having sickly distinctly, but non-distinctly at campuses A through Z, having had other communicators for James Madison and for the plural founders. They have framed for slavery. And we don't know anything. Like whatever had in the records about themselves, to an extent we know it was not true. Otherwise, they would, even the only founder we know the name of, James Madison, we were supposed to know that clearly. See, because now they won't even, our own people won't let that discern, because everyone already had self-valid roles replacing how they were unnamed and why they were unnamed founders, and they were using a plan that is replaced by a whole bunch of other psycho, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw narratives and natures. Because you guys were child abused at campuses A through Z, but hyper additionally from off the location slash S, so you have forgiveness. But in other words, and when you did not, too, you leave out the breaching method, or you are forced to. Everyone at least senses it. We have black people's rights of eyes. We know there was a sick thing entrenched here. We know that there's a nature of calmness that needs a protraction of logic. Relative again, we're not leaving out black people's rights of eyes in these hyper goggles, so to speak, as means to discern worse than criminal incompetence used criminally foreign influence, pretending that's even debatable. I mean, used remotely at Country A through Z regarding the topic of black people's rights of eyes in slavery. A breaching method that had that entrenched. A breaching method only allowed, you know, a naive quality aspects of nature, principal treatments with the names of the people of the sciences at the locations of them, at locations tied to databases, not just of the republic for which we stand, and all exceptions. So we can't appreciate the difference slash S. That nature revealed those difference and exceptions so we can discern its own. But see, this breaching method knew consciously how nature would be increasingly demonstrating to us the hyperforensic trail right to it. So it made a whole bunch of time collusion slash S through these principal treatments to self-defended and the defenses of that. How come no one brings up what is recorded too? It's very recorded in various ways. They're hiding it by replacing and changing, faking what's digitally recorded in other ways. The Connecticut corrections offices and the judicial offices and the differences of guilt there are conjunctions to it and to that are part with a forensic slash hyper forensic trail. I'm not even a lawyer, police form. In other words, I'm not a judge. But James Madison and what witch trials are about. Next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And there and across the country, other communicated for our founders about those founding about the founding location slash S and things slash S associated with it and name slash S. This breaching method means people attacking our founders' names plural and or pretend or defending them as collusion slash S, pretending they have roles with slavery. James Madison said, described what there was a crazy torture, extortion, slavery method against everyone rolls against themselves and others to an extent slash S, or that body was his sense. The FBI has collusions with other agencies and countries, with Weathersfield police families and intercities, same ones intercities, with the campuses, where they're putting fake things in databases, and they're putting fake and changed communications with everyone and everyone around them. And these are increasingly the people that these are police forms involved with shootings of people who are also ones involved with the differences of guilt. They have time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and remote uses of the sense and sensibilities that everyone would say with the World Trade Center leading up to it, in it and since, including the court next to it, including Washington D.C. Everyone goes fishing criminally with truths too, changing, faking, hiding, obfuscating, and obstructing justice by preventing people short words regarding the fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack that Channel 3 News had and has. WFSB, they have a bunch of people tied to the name Scalora too. A bunch of boyfriends tied to a Claudia Scalora are involved with foreign and domestic intelligence and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and female judges, and victims advocates, and prosecutors. The counters all collusion, all with the same sequence shifts. News, identity theft, fraud, slanders, touching kids to fake ties to doctors and mental diagnosis never were, while they were forcing a principal child abuser involved with doctors involved with that. I never had a word of conversation in my life with a Leahy family. A bunch of people with Harper Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with them and with the FBI, Robert Luskin, with his federal criminal co-defendants and their family members. A bunch of people with the class of 1993 of Weathersfield, Connecticut. Record sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They had roles with people below and above their grade with their confessions, and I didn't even respond to them. I never had a word of conversation in real life ever with a Robert Rodriguez. I only know his name because it was on YouTube. I noticed his picture. 2 times he's trying to plant evidence on my street, and with confessions that brought up the name Scalora too, as the ones involved time collusions with people with Scalora, Demoro, and Colol. There's a Phil Colol further with the Whiting forensics, further involved with a principal obscure nature, who was involved with way worse. And he was forced to an extent too. But this was also long term. People involved with the Michael Bean. And then he brought up the name Mike Levine too, and tried to make it look like it was a mistake. But Mike Levine was also other ways brought up by the people. I had a word of conversation with the Mike Levine. Has something to do with their roles with people with the name Demaro and Scalora and Colol, and with the roles with the side entrance to to a to what it used to be Caldor, now it's Waldorf, Walmart, but it's town lines, the same ones with town lines, and their roles with the databases at the campuses, acting tied to predicate acts faked in the databases, also changed and faked what everyone said, and the difference of who did it and when is also exploited. That's manifest too, because all of them were used remotely. You shouldn't change, fake, and hide people short words regarding faked World Trade Center attack, predicate intelligence, right through administrations. These were our names and collusions with elections locations, Weathersfield town offices and other town offices. Collusion / that's also with probation officers, all identities of titles, jobs, involved with murderous things at the same time. Everyone was speaking to other more enforced, but then they jump into people's business dishonestly. Then they force the internet companies, where they're supposed to go into police the world too. They're making them jump into things dishonestly. Also, because the FBI has collusions with people with the syntax of people, even if it wasn't them, and they're just pretending to be them, like a Joshua Julian and his roles with a bunch of people along routes 175 from the founding location and Route 3. I had a word of I was only nice to a really quick. What do you call it, was influenced to pretend other. I know, like a whole bunch of people from Trinity College have roles with planting evidences, with people who planted evidence on my street from other areas. I have roles with people with Washington, D.C., and with New York, who have roles with the World Trade Center attack. Christopher Walters is one of the ones. So I only know him seeking me out. I didn't know the ways. Even if it was to help me, it wasn't to help me. These people with all sides of criminal and civil cases and interbranch porn at the same time, put in the same sequence shifts. And I don't know the words. Identity theft, fraud, slanders. Never had a word of conversation with this Joshua Stryker. And I can't get anyone to respond. Intercities, see that they're using the town lines, and the difference, oh, that's not our town. They're using predicate acts with facts. Confessions. They're making people use violence. And they're using weapons, so people use weapons back on them. Because he's a whole rap mob and the overt criminal enterprise and private one terrorists. Get me off the fake conversations with Weathersfield police when I was a kid and as an adult. Wasn't at all. When I was a kid too, I only know about it because they pretended that with through the news. These are also people with their Facebook pages of the Prince Superior Court and of Weathersfield Police and of other courts involved before the World Trade Center attack. They affected confessions to me and requests for help. And then after the World Trade Center attack, they try they're switching names, forging names, trying to frame me to hide it, to hide what's actually recorded. All kinds of drugs and medicines, crime and corruption, with the only people that are there to counter those things. In other words, there are identity theft fraud things. You try to go to anyone to speak about principles and things like that properly. Those people will make it a mental health issue dishonestly. They already did that too many times. They have to hide that. They're putting people with fake conversations with doctors. They're recording them. They were shown they were recording themselves, trying to make fake exceptions to look other. More money they owe the rest of the doctors in the real healthcare of Hartford Hospital and the hospitals involved, like with this Leahy family. How much money they owe that place? And in other words, these are multiple courts personally and professionally involved with the Leahy family and people that also recorded there's a confessed demonstration firm. In other words, there are people with the name Lombardo involved too, and their roles there's a whole list of people, and they also pretended in the fake conversation they pretended that I said that everyone's evil. These are a whole bunch of people that have been planting evidences through time. So a joke, and plus it's recorded too. There were very and confessed, demonstrated, confirmed various natures of federal evidences crimes with people associated with a Joe Lombardo. I never had a word of conversation with him. His conversations behind my back at my school with his educators. He's been planting evidences of people on office that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed them collusions with the databases at the campuses and with the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices, including medical and fire campuses. These are also people with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and various natures of federal criminals. Some of them as co-defendants of a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case. They also have further then and now collusions against your kids with various natures of organized crimes and other natures of abuses of. These are the same ones with elderly homes too. Positions of all ages and natures of campuses and exceptions associated with it. They have you guys a sense and sensibility, styles of logic, natures of logic that are incapable of following mandated law, have been using the phones to prevent things from being and to censor this. In other words, they're putting fake transcripts when they're caught with the phones, and then they're making it look like the people. Then they're arresting people, put them in jail for 6 months. Then people are going to shut up and sit and not say anything. We have to get them on. In other words, this. Then they want to pretend they compare us to other countries. That's why there's wars. At countries A through Z, the names of the people of the sciences came through 6 sciences. They were child abused. Forgiveness too is to not leave out the breaching method and to allow someone to show what's actually recorded. Get me off the fake communications with the interbranch and with the complete fake transcripts with the interbranch and with the news at the same time and their sources. West Hartford campuses have an O'Neill, a family involved with their kids professionally and involved with their kids personally with Weathersfield campuses with various natures of organized crimes with them. And they're leaking too. I never had a word of conversation with them in my life. Increasingly, people involved with the World Trade Center attack have collusions with them too. And like with this Robert Rodriguez and people with untimely deaths. And that brought up the principal child abusers campus to me and their roles obstructing justice and using their kids for identity theft, fraud, slanders, while tactically delusions raw, which is also use /s of corners of streets where they have Russians and all the other countries involved at the same time, where they have religious spots involved and names on all sides of it. like with the Robert Rodriguez. And I never had a word of conversation with him, except for on Facebook where he verified about the untimely deaths, as other people did too. See, they took my Facebook page. People were verifying things with people that are involved, recorded, involved with investigations, investigators, all ages and natures of them in their campuses. At the same time, with a whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and per worse, used remotely with same self-value sequence shift, same value self-value collusion slash S, preventing anyone from voicing what James Madison communicated roles with you slash S of who knows the most about it, like that. Reading of what he wrote with the law, leaving out that breaching method. He did not have free speech. We would want more. In other words, better than free. We can make and save more energy dropping water than it takes to lift it. Black pupils, peer. Demand we see black people slash the whites of eyes. By correlations means that by nature, that which generates this, for show, slash S, the nature slow slash S. Let me demonstrate pantheism, and we'll donate it together, and we'll do like YouTube ground. No, let's do like, or I don't know if we can name it that. We'll name it. We'll do a, you know, all we have to do is organize around the negative problems and keep them real and keep it. If it's real, it's not leaving. Keep them real slash hyper real to check too. And what that means, in other words, if it's not, if it's leaving out the breaching method, if it's leaving out replacing, while simultaneously being and having been self-valued, we're doing that and using, because no one self-values that. So using the motivations and demonstrations of that to hide the breaching method's roles, why they self-value that. Again, the breaching method abused you at campuses A through Z. It from off the campuses, and you discerned it to an extent. It's all recorded a whole bunch of ways. You say, "Oh no," but then you show, we have black pupils. In other words, in the list of things, box things, so we can make hyper positives out of negatives. All those things. Nature shows us all those distinct multi-front abuses of differences, of different slashes, of human rights, etc. They were all equally about, they were all equally valued as being about and as the breaching method slash S used as a tool to keep its part, that hyper singular part, generating all the rest. The hyper, like for example, it designed the suburbs to cause negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, while it propagated, self-cultivated without anyone realizing, because you guys were all child abused, shock and awe regarding how cities across the world really became manifest. They have suburbs that were designed before cars, designed for a torture, extortion, slavery method that James Madison designed was to use us from abroad, because everyone was reliant upon value nature systems, things means by the breaching method, through overt criminal enterprise, private ones, overt, the internationally monitored forced conversations, all sense and sensibilities use Jan Austin's phrase. Where, no one had free speech. Everyone had to pretend other too, to an extent slash S, because it was checked. Everyone was an extent slash S of collusion slash S against others. Otherwise, that body was sensitive and was hurt. James Madison is the only founder that described this. But if we pay attention, every other founder was trying to describe it too. But James Madison's also the only founder that we know the name of. And he could not have been alone. And see, president slash chief, because nature too shows us, even though we don't know the name of who those pillar founders were, president slash chief and nature itself being hyper native shows us that multi-front this breaching method is against us as humanity, is against us as Native Americans, even if we are not Native Americans. I'm not a Native American. But it is against the front, against us, where the Native Americans even have to entertain debates regarding a breaching method involved with impositions upon their access to water and means by power and might as defined by nature's identity of relationship to itself. Because where we could discern these things, where we could discern its individual body generating things that are ourselves, like how we are a species body of individual bodies and group differences, like male, female, two eyes, two parts of time, past, and what is active that we are conscious of, grouped distinctly from two parts of time, like the seasons yet to come, and what is active here now, and the end of the season. God willing, that makes it. Smart guy say, God willing. The ancients would say, God willing, relative to the function. Is it true always? Is it itself? Nature's. Nature shows us it is functional where and how. It is itself one way, hyper invisible but still discernible, has one distinct identity of relationship to itself that way. But it also has a invisible visible but still discernible identity relationship to itself too. And a third, that which is the equal to the value of the slash. By criminal insidiousness, but nature is showing us. It comes from criminal foreign influences slash hypercriminal foreign influences. But not just criminal foreign. See, criminal foreign influences, the breaching method knew could hide behind and through. And including it needs the difference slash S of guilt to hide behind and through. So it had and has prisons, their patients, their forced patients, their prisoners, their doctors, their forced doctors, their family members, the guards, their family members, their campuses. They have to hide the same live aggressions, the news locations, the same predicate acts with facts, the same identity theft, fraud, things, relative delusions, American history, where it is principally replaced with James Madison communicated. They had classified of the breaching method. There are criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects of nature, self-violated by the people, names of the people by the sciences, of the sciences, and of the people countering them, and with exceptions consciously as collusion slash S, preventing people short words. That others are also obligated to respond to properly, honestly, with integrity. So you get me off of fake conversations with my family about the World Trade Center attack. Interstates. Channel 3 News had collusions with a whole bunch of countries and people next to the World Trade Center before and after the World Trade Center attack. And they're being influenced to pretend it's personal when I say that. They're pretending they want privacy with others too. I don't even know. I never had a word of conversation with the O'Neill family in my life. And a Leahy family has their kids on Facebook involved with organized crimes with them. That's child abuse too. See the mixed natures of organized crimes with the kids. And people with sequence shifts too, who are sick with language too. They're baiting, they're trying to keep other things, others resolved. What happened to this? They're keeping each age of fact in nature, invested, incapable of being or of affording to be that quality of fact nature we need to get the Constitution on a bridge and evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere, revealed right here, vaccines. So a bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved, and confirmed involve all kinds of organized crimes with the differences of guilt there or at the networks or conjunctions to it into that. And they also have that as Hartford, Connecticut is also collusion slash S along Route 3 through Wethersfield, etc. Through time, increasingly involved with predicate acts with facts, with federal evidences racketeering worse than war crimes that is discernible at country's A through Z only capable of being relative to this child abuse. I am not a lawyer, but nature shows are here, and natural law is real. In other words, please. So the interbranch and the news at the same time have federal, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences crime, intelligence crimes, and motivation screening too, and leaking. Because when they want to debate things, they can't debate things legitimately. So they self-value collusion slash S2 increasingly with the courts and with the prisons, with increasingly roles with the crime scenes and the relative body dumping spots, like the body dumping spot of a serial killer and his serial killer and that killer, and other people with other body dumping spots and other reported killers. They have collusion with names that next to that spot with the prison there too, who also had collusion with the principal child abuser before that was caught. And they also had more with the principal with the former police chief Cintron's reported daughter. And these are his offers are refusing to identify. They make confession, run away. They fake conversations of me being at the police station, communicating with them as a kid, now as an adult. And they try to fake communication with me here too, say things and run away. In other words, they switch names. They can't be trusted. That's how I'm trying to get things on paper. They've been changing digital evidences. The breaching method showed them how to read law and reality regarding what's written online, and then it showed them they have to hide how it showed them to read reality, criminally foreign influence, while tactically delusions raw. Black pupils. A bunch of people tied to a Christina Sioka have collusions with people on the street that has roles with abuses of girls. And they want and need, when we see these people commit predicate acts, when we speak about principles in the past, leaving out people's names. That's one of the things they did when I tried to explain that in videos, and all of a sudden the app breaks. Not the YouTube, the app on my computer with the video thing. These are people that have mail and wire crime methods with the police forms and the Weathersfield police, and like with this Mendez police and his brother, involved with the Brit Superior Court with Weathersfield police, and next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, and other places, and roles with campuses used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And they also have people involved with religious spots and intern and cultural themes, where and how that was is used remotely as time collusion. They have a whole bunch of countries at the same time involved with them. In other words, they try to fake exceptions. They plant evidence with Eric Jensen, Eric Jensen, Justin Kovinskis, and when they had them pulling into tricked me to being in the car by first tricking me to go to a hotel thing. They were there, and then they went to the food bag in Weathersfield from Rocky Hill. Then they go in and then he pulls up, and that has something to do. These are people increasingly planting evidence. I don't know. That was a fake exception. I had not a word of conversation with him. Those are people increasingly involved all along Route 175 with Joshua. These are also people with the Joshua Stryker at Trinity College, involved with people making confessions about him on my street, involved with untimely deaths years apart, and child abuses, and everyone lying behind about themselves to people in my area and about others in the area behind their backs. These are people that start fighting. This is with all areas. When people said women, there's fight between these people and some other people involved, there's also others /S involved. A whole bunch of countries involved with this, with Mark Violet and a Perron family, further involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, and people with something to do with their neighbors and their roles with conversations with I never had a personal conversation with those, like that gym teacher, what's his name, Hagenbar, It's something to do with people who had conversations with Hagenbar and with former Mayor Gold and people involved with this Perron family, planting evidences with this with Mark Violet and others, interstates and internationally, increasingly with Central Connecticut State University involved also with as the people involved with society attackers, which were themselves recorded used remotely. You guys have sick readings of every of the sciences and of the religions. You guys need them right, wrong, and everyone fighting because you have readings of psychiatry, which is criminally foreign influence. Why there are all kinds of organized crimes there. They have collusions with crime scenes. They have collusions with various natures of courts, personally and professionally. Harvard Hospital, getting out the fake transcripts with the Leahy family. Then look at the wire crime action methods they did 2 times to bring me in there to force the first time, not told on, when I started telling about it online. Then they brought their kid into it too. The little kids. They have all ages of their family members with the Leahy family. Multiple ages of their family members. And people with the name Lombardo. And their patients. These are the family, without also the family members of people who own the car dealerships, associated with people with the family members further involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, with the retired police chiefs and the police chief Centron. In other words, they've been directing a Mazzucato family to fake ties and nature's ties to me, and with people foreign and domestic with the name, in other words, Domain too, as one and tied to people named Mike Domain, involved also with prosecutors and judges involved with sexual medical offenders of kids with the campuses, and who had planted evidences on my street involved with that, with my algebra class teacher, and rules with spying. But that's right through our own too. At countries XYZ, because there's a hyper foreign involved. That's what motivates everyone for spying. Then it needs that hate too. So it needs other things to be blamed, even until they're real. In other words, all this, in other words, follow it in relative to the breaching method still has collusion. It designed the suburbs. It designed how you speak about black people as whites of eyes and or exceptions. In other words, the black and white with the history. James Madison communicated to blame that breaching method that forced that and rolls with that and against all kinds of things at the same time. And sensibilities by that with calmness, no, and or with aggression, etc. Tactical terror, how nature was dictating it to be. I'll see, discern, black people appear. Great meanings appear. Boxing forgiveness. It's to leverage that blame that we can all discern to an extent. It has to be, in other words, there's a lot of things slash S to blame, but there's also the hyperforeign breaching method to blame for why the ocean's polluted. It's different if we're blaming the breach. We blame everything on it. Countries A through Z, it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded everyone to only hear voicing slash S for humanity through an as systems tactical terror than humanity's individual body of species bodies, of individual bodies. While other individual species bodies have other individual bodies, group differences like male, female, 2 eyes, 2 sexes, three parts of time are bound. Forever nature's course is here. Regain, refound. Vaccines, religion, tread. I hear your name. Slash S, Republic 2. Ooh. In other words, don't be too hard on them, but think about that. How they're up there saying F the president. That's they're up there where they're the only they can force everyone to hear them. What do? What kind of principles do they want to go to F you? Because they want to keep the kids blamed or other parents or other things, others, rather than things that we're supposed to blame, like the breaching method at campuses A through Z, like in New York City. You have a collusion slash S. You have confessions made to those kids each day under the other pretended. We're going to deal with communication slash nonverbal communication, verbal slash nonverbal communication, because we're going to deal with hyper communication. Nonverbal communication is only capable of being only manifest value because of how hyper communications. Again, hyper is a word used to appreciate or to assess appreciation, full, complete, proper, or not, of every word. Like, for example, walk, hyper walk. Like, what is the function of walking by nature? Well, what is the value of it to nature? It is value to nature, not just criminally insidious, not just because of criminally forward impulses, let alone self-value ones used remotely, not right, we're not. In other words, walking. Nature wants us to move. That's one of the things that the breaching method didn't change. I mean, change that too, and our appreciation with our syntax. We have been system slash S tactical terror from its own. And there are a whole bunch of, natures of impositions with technology in the natures of industries and of business. Where and how too that they also have replaced what James Madison had declassified for us to amend with this conversation slash S. It's a difference if someone were going to say, in other words, they're setting up those kids because some of those people blame it on the Democrats at the campuses. Some of them blame it on Republican and others. Like, these are people at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. In other words, when was there an identity names of when were the names of the people assigned to the counters to them not syntax through systems abridged? They were not. They're still abridged. We're supposed to allow free speech because it's hyper simultaneous. See Marbury versus Madison too. You guys are torturing me too by preventing me a speech. I tried to contact the judge in Napolitano about this. Fox News has roles with the difference of guilt, though, of the people there or next to them or conjunctive to that and to that. Like Route 3 and Rocky Hill, Weathersfield is involved with people next to Fox Connecticut News through time, including other type of journalists and their ties to this Perone family. And people involved with syntax with a girl across the street from her. The only time I ever saw her on our campus, it was time relative to a Joe DeMoro is involved with a Mr. Abruzzi. And then years later, right before the World Trade Center attack, I believe it was before it. I can't remember if it was before or after. Someone brought up Mr. Abruzzi involved with it. When I was a kid, before I knew what Central Connecticut State, where it was and stuff, where kids brought up the confessions to me. Increasingly, people tied to a Leahy family have been planting evidences at corners of buildings, too, making confessions tied to that. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, like making the bell go off. They have roles with people involved with that. And then someone will say something, he said, she said. They have roles with putting fake transcripts in databases while tactical delusions raw. And they have roles of people tied to a Christina Sioka who faked conversations and ties to me too. But before and after the World Trade Center attack, where are people also involved with relative body dumping spots and confessions and requests for help from the courts tied to those doctors, foreign and domestic, personally and professionally, foreign and domestic military at the same time. I basically never had a conversation with a Marco Mancini, a Ray Cologne, a Joe DeMoro have roles with foreign and domestic intelligence and federal agencies with federal criminals and various natures of proven child abusers, leaders, and kids. They faked other. They told something other to people with the name Mancini. I don't know them. I I had a quick conversation with him one time. I didn't even say another in a cafeteria, and then they tried to set up that thing that they initiated that pipe bomb and stuff like that. These are people with the state judicial branch too, with other pipe bombs, and with the Washington D.C. Get me off paid conversations with about the World Trade Center attack with the Channel 3 News. These are people interstates, and their sources who had time roles with the principal child abuser, also with the names as relatives of theirs, at next to the World Trade Center the night before it, and the court next to it the morning thereof, and people with it that morning too, and nature's people with next to them various ways, and conjunctive to them and to that is also manifest where there is guilt manifest that it is relative slash hyper relative. Forgiveness is to not leave out the hyper foreign part and to allow someone to tell. They're lying about what they think the motives of people are, the way the law directs them not to. The news, the only people who are allowed. In other words, all natures of functions are in nature of collusion slash S. Whereas, in other words, as long as there's hierarchy, corruption, or lower, the difference of guilt with that too. In other words, get them on paper because it's not to name guilt; it's to focus on the predicate acts because there's foreign involved. But where it's discernible is where all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch of foreign at the same time in the news had time collusions, even with names at next to body double response and child abusers at the same time. That's evidence, people. That's hyper evidential. Get them on paper. Get them on paper. And have that Joshua Stryker say sorry to Trinity College and to the other leaders of the kids. And that girl, I don't even know her name. Increasingly, see, these are people that say they want privacy. There are victims advocates involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and overt criminal enterprises and private ones who have time collusions with identity theft frauds, put consciously putting people to fake ties, nature ties to people that weren't even on their, they went to the same campus, were in the same grade, and never even saw each other around campuses. They're trying to pretend other. Any exception to they're planting, they're recorded planting fake exceptions. It's recorded a whole bunch of ways of discerning how all ages and natures of investigators in their campuses were used remotely. But it's also the difference of guilt of them, of work criminal enterprises. Every difference is attacked to keep a certain type of reaction, non-reaction style, to keep a style of fact nature. I can't defend that and afford to be discerned. That quality of fact should be capable of breaking it all. Here, wow. Focus on the World Trade Center predicate acts. I'm not telling you to focus on blaming them guilty, but that's what just for those acts, because there are more people involved with their use of location slash S. WFSB has various natures of other organized crimes against the kids too, and then you can't. Why didn't you say anything? I'm trying to say something about it. They have been doing this through time. I saw a bunch of people tied to a Sal Civiello and a Richard Dombrowski and his neighbors increasingly have collusions with wire crime acts and methods, and with planting fake intelligence, people involved with untimely deaths, murders, body dumping spots, identity theft, fraud, motive screening too, because the breaching method is involved with their motives. And these are people I try. These are people sought me out outside of campus to demonstrate their collusion. I saw them with the people that were putting fake things in databases at the campus I went. Get them on pay. I never had a conversation ever with South Seville. He made a statement to be expressive to me one time. It was to make a fake exception. I didn't respond to it. With Eric Jensen and people on 2 Route Highway involved with multiple foreign and domestic, including judges, family members, and like a Dillon family and other people involved with inter and intra cities involved with organized crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal evidence crimes, interbranch forging, switching names, fabricating transcripts, remote uses, collusion slash that's with remote uses too of others of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano, including with whiting forensics, is increasingly involved with various natures of organized crimes through time with people tied to it and places tied to a Phil Cololo and others they brought the names and one of their people brought up the name of a Lee Gold and a Debbie Gold. And her father demonstrated too is increasingly involved with people from other countries, involved with federal crimes, with evidences, and with databases at the campuses I went, and with people on my street that have been planting evidences tied to them. All and using all exceptions to pretend other with criminally. They're obstructing justice too, guys. With you and using you guys hyper additionally having everyone report on other people's reporting and then debate that where it's all fake. Fake news is real. And that's evidence. Oh, there's no evidence. They know that's evidence. They fake conversations with me. The difference of guilt of the intelligence there or next to them. Those are also people through time. Um, Rocky Hill, that location, has something to do with the corner of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Weathersfield with a police chief Cintron. And him through, and they don't even speak. They won't even get on paper legitimately. They're switching names, forging names, but they have they're through themselves. They're communicating. They have a people with the name Mazzucato involved with the bakery, involved with identity theft, fraud, slings, all kinds of evidences racket, and drugs and medicines crimes, identity theft, fraud, slings with doctors, medical ones like named Leahy and per my family confirmed this too. I never my own used to hang around with one of the people named Cololo who repeated his name to me, and then I knew him. They tried to make a fake exception at a corner of a building too. A fake exception. I know when I came into a cafeteria. People time where you're gonna go to the opposite, you come there and some other little rap mob. These are little fakes. They're changing fake what they say with whatever they were trying to record things or what. They're saying different things. John Mayall, he's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the day my car, but the first day I was going to take a bus after my car was broke, he pulls up in my house to drive me to school. Like he knew I was going to be there. Then he made a bunch of confessions tied to that, and which were also confirmations. It's also people involved with a Paul Zano, involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids and foreign and domestic families, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and roles with a CM Paglione family when I was walking into school was poised there, and the Paul Zano trying to put fake ties between me and Paul Zano and fake and Rick CM Paglione are people with the school's databases involved with this Leahy family, and one's named Lombardo, who also have collusions with people on my street with them. A Rick Sanfaglione sought me out on my street to report, confess, demonstrate, confirm. A Leahy family and a Brian Silver are involved with the Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and with the Harper Hospital. He didn't say Harper Hospital. The people he brought up next to it and at it, this Leahy family. And these are people like I would never go seek someone out to do those. Why would no? But I never tried to seek out a Rick Sanfaglione in my life. I only know him through confessions. And his father is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with him with O'Brien family members, with multiple police departments, and with people with syntax with them on Griswold Street with the former mayor Gold and others involved with this. And their roles with connects with databases. And Mr. Neville too has Route 3. He repeated involvements with it, with others involved with it. All along Route 3, conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, are people involved who have interstates, intrastates, inter and intra campuses. They're putting fake things in databases, also fake for everyone. Get me off of fake conversations with the interbranch and with the news at the same time. Judge Napolitano, they're using readings of statutes that are criminally foreign influence, tactical illusions, raw. You guys are going to go and then speak about the State of the Union speech. Reach, please. All retired and standing are used and were used remotely. At the same time with the overt criminal enterprise and private ones. Please have the humility to allow it to be discerned. Be the first one to be righteous, proper, / hyper righteous. Repent. I prevent. Please do this right. Someone.